What's a rich people thing that rich people don't know is a rich people thing? Before we start with the first story, please hit subscribe and ring the notification bell to stay updated with us. Story 1. I dated a guy whose folks were really rich. At one point, we were all riding around on his dad's speedboat on the lake where they had their million-something second home. We passed a big house that was somewhat bigger than the big house his dad and stepmom owned. His stepmom sighed softly and said, "I wonder how the other half lives. It must be nice." My in-laws have 3 houses, all paid for, and millions in the bank. When my mother-in-law says this, which she does frequently, I tell her, well, mostly we stress about paying for our kids' college tuition. We do just fine, but Jesus, the lack of perspective. Story 2. If you grow up rich, it's pretty much everything. Essentially, it's atmosphere. My aunt's family was very well off. Her husband had a blue-collar background. The first time he saw her was the summer after his junior year of college, when he was part of a crew doing lawn work at her parents' house. They dated very briefly, but they had nothing in common. He busted his got a few lucky breaks, and ended up with a very lucrative job. A few solid investments later, he was actually worth more than my aunt's whole family. 8 years later, he asked her out again. To hear him tell it, he took her to a really swanky restaurant with a long wait list that he managed to bypass thanks to a friend who knew the owner. As soon as they sat down, he said to her, "I always wanted to take you to a place like this." My aunt looked around the room, she looked at him, and she said, "A place like what?" To her, it was just a restaurant. Story 3. Their social networks. Small example. My son just graduated college with a degree in blah blah, and my good golf buddy owns a blah blah firm. I'll ask if he has a summer internship opening. Yeah, this is the real one. What rich people do better is network with other rich people. Even if they never give their children a trust fund, they're setting Junior up with a high-paying job using connections. Which isn't to say middle-class people don't also do this. It's just that their network is typically also middle-class, so Junior's resume is landing on the desk of someone hiring for a $50K a year job. Story 4. I had quite a funny experience in this department. I'm from a working-class trades background. All of my dad's mates are in the trades. After 30 years, a lot of them are doing quite well for themselves, have started a business, are starting to take their hands off a little too. Anyhow, I asked some of them if they'd be happy to take me on as an apprentice. Their answer, "Nah, you'd be a liability, stick to academics, that's what you're made for." Unfortunately, my family has no academic friends, nor do they have any connections to people who would have work suited to my abilities. Thankfully, I'm in a job now, but I really was starting to feel the limits of class connections. Story 5. I once had a rich kid I attended high school say to me, because I made the mistake of vocalizing my envy, and stating that my family was so poor we'd never even left the state, that traveling the world isn't about having money, it's about having courage. Which is not only probably some cheesy quote her mother had hanging in their house or something, it's also completely untrue, laughing my ass off. Like what? Am I gonna show up to a resort and they say, "That'll be $2,000 please?" And I respond with, "Oh, no sorry, I'll be paying my tab with courage." Story 6. A friend of mine is a trust fund baby. She decided she wanted to hike the so she quit her very comfy job, bought all the gear, and flew to Virginia. She only made it a few weeks and got bored. Came back home and her dad found her another very comfy job. Hasn't been hiking since. I was floored by this. Another friend decided she wanted to be a dairy farmer, so she bought a farm in Kansas and got some cows. Then she had to hire a farmhand after 2 cows died because she didn't know they needed minerals. They just act so flippantly without care or thought. Story 7. I have one that nobody ever thinks about, but friendships. When you move in wealthy circles, maintaining a circle of friendships is much easier. They have the time, energy, and money to prioritize trips away together. They can meet their girlfriends for dinners because they have access to childcare and don't have to be up at 5 a.m. 7 days a week. They can outsource their admin. They don't have to be calling the electrician or spending the day taking their car to a mechanic. They have access to a high level of medical care, so may spend less time chasing medical issues around. They have the freedom to pursue these friendships. When you're working class, you and all your friends are working their ass off just surviving and keeping on top of their responsibilities. We're all busy and exhausted, so maintaining friendships takes a lot of work and sacrifice. It's why we always see wealthy people with like 40 close friends, and we have like 2 close friends we struggle to make time to see. Story 8. Rich hobbies. My girlfriend's family is well off and has a cabin by the lake. Was talking to a friend of theirs one night over drinks, and it came up that I, 30+, have neither golfed nor been water skiing. And the guy goes, "I don't understand, what did you do as a kid then?" Didn't even know how to respond. Growing up, I never even knew anyone who had tried either because no one could dream of affording it. Had a similar experience, except on a racetrack. I was talking to some guys about how I wish I could have started racing when I was younger. I could have been something. Dude asked, "Why didn't you?" Told him that I was so poor we couldn't afford a soccer ball. Had to play with an empty milk jug on the streets. LOL. Story 9. Buying things that last. Rich people can afford much higher quality products. Think furniture, clothing, accessories. Sitting on a probably 30-year-old couch that we inherited from my in-laws, who I would describe as on the high end of middle class. But this stuff also gets spread around. When you move into your own place, your dad's old friend might have a dresser for you, or an old TV that still works, or what have you. And over time, the smart rich people spend less money than the poor. They can afford the upfront investment in higher quality products that last, while also enjoying the better quality of the products over their lifespan. And yes, for those in the know, I am reframing the Samuel Vimes boots theory, but it works here. Story 10. Having time. Poor people spend more time on survival stuff. Take traveling. A poorer person may have to rely on public transportation, coach seats in an airplane, buses, or Amtrak. A wealthy person may have a private jet they have access to. A poor person has to go to the grocery store, shop, cook, clean, etc. A wealthy person may have someone who does all that and cooks for them. So rich people have more time to live exactly as they want, without worrying about survival kind of stuff. Story 11. My mom works front desk at a dental office. She has been there for over 20 years. The owner dentist is a pompous ass who makes money out the wazoo, has 2 vacation homes he makes sure to mention all the time, and still doesn't offer benefits to his employees because it's too expensive. Unfortunately, I have to see him twice a year. I usually try to avoid conversation for sake of keeping the peace between him and my mom, as he is her boss, because I have a hard time being kind to him considering what he says. So, last time I was in, he came in to check my teeth and told me out of nowhere, we weren't even speaking before this, that his daughter and her BF moved to Jamaica and are about to retire. I said, "Isn't your daughter my age?" 25. And he said, "Yeah, they put $200,000 down on an investment and made it back over tenfold." Now, what I wanted to say was, do you actually believe that the normal person has $200,000 to potentially throw away? But instead, I stared at him, didn't say a word, not even sure I blinked. I stared at him so long in silence he left without saying a word. My New Year's resolution was to make people sit in the awkwardness they create. Story 12. Vacations. I grew up in a family that was very financially comfortable. I was used to going on multiple trips a year, including a handful of international trips before I even graduated from high school. I lived a somewhat sheltered life surrounded mostly by friends of families in similar positions. I remember trips to country club resorts, all-inclusives, multiple trips to Disney World, 2 trips to Mexico for high school graduations. We were constantly traveling throughout the year. Now I'm an adult who makes a very average salary, approximately $60,000. And I never feel like traveling because my money is either tied up in something else or I feel the need to save just in case. My family went on a trip to Colorado this past spring, and it was so expensive. We had to buy appropriate winter wear because my husband and I didn't own any, including good snow boots, coats, and pants. Airfare, food. We couldn't afford to ski because a single day pass was $200, excluding what it would cost to rent equipment. We walked around a cute little downtown hoping to find a nice memento to memorialize the trip and ended up only getting a single magnet for our fridge. Sometimes I get a little bummed that I've probably already gone on some of the coolest trips of my life as an early 30-something. But that's okay. Traveling is a privilege, and when we have the resources to do it again, it will feel more special because it will be special. Story 13. In America, if you have a job with a good healthcare package, read, working as an office worker at a larger corporation, chances are you're not terribly worried about medical expenses. Where things break down in America is if you work for a smaller company with a poor healthcare package, you work in the service industry at a restaurant or hotel, or where you are self-employed or unemployed, where you have to buy your insurance off the healthcare exchange rather than having an employer-provided group policy. My wife used to work for a healthcare company as a registered dietitian, and the healthcare package she got was fantastic. Out of pocket, there was practically nothing. Now that we're both self-employed, we're paying $2,400 a month for an insurance policy that doesn't pay out squat unless either of us come down with cancer or are in a severe auto accident. Everything up to our $7,000 a year deductible comes straight out of pocket. Story 14. Having a gardener and/or housekeeper. Owning a vacation house, chalet cottage. Man, I wish I could own a house. Always getting your coffee as takeout. Going out to lunch at an actual restaurant every day. Getting a service to come pick up and do your laundry, and then drop it off later. And this last one I get from a lot of younger folk who have no concept that their family is well off and they are reaping the benefits, always traveling. Usually these are kids in their 20s, but I know a couple who I see Facebook updates constantly where they are always in a different country. These are the people who are gone months at a time and then maybe come back home during the holidays and just stay with their parents and then leave again. They don't have a house or apartment of their own that they would need to worry about continuing to pay for, so they can just be a nomad. Story 15. For my purposes, I'm going to define rich as starting in the upper middle class. Your average lawyer is rich by middle age by this standard. And as I work with lawyers and have for a while now, they offer some interesting ways to illustrate things. For one, the notion that someone doesn't have savings will, they frequently suppose, be a choice at best, if not an actual moral failing. The notion that a person might literally not have anything to set aside once the non-negotiable costs are tallied does not compute. A rich person, as I've defined them, might not be saving themselves, but they could after all, and they know it. Another is that a rich person probably does not know how much money they have with any degree of precision. They might think they have about X thousand in the investment account, Y 10,000 in the retirement account, some vague thousands in checking, and frequently some equally vague but larger amount in checking. In all of these, there is significant lack in precision. A poor person, both by virtue of having fewer places where money might be and absolute need, almost certainly knows how much money they have, often down to the penny. A rich person can shop for groceries without really considering the cost of this versus that. The deciding factor on what goes into the cart is almost always something other than money. They prefer that brand of chips, beef presented in this particular way, and won't so much as blink at the fact that many types of produce can vary in price multiple times over depending on seasonal availability. Similarly, they can choose where they want to go eat without having to calculate whether it is possible. And from this same wellspring, all forms of spontaneity. The more money you have, the less you need to plan, well, everything. You can take all of this and package it together into a single idea that underlines why no poor person ever believes anyone with money when they say money can't buy happiness, and that is that if you are poor. Much of what you have to give to the world as a person is dedicated to planning and managing a resource that is finite and frequently entirely absent. Stated differently, the thing rich people do that they don't know about is that they are not stressed about the basic tasks of living life to the point where they frequently have very little left for anything else. Alright folks, that's a wrap. If you like this, please hit the thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. You can also share your those in the comment below.